Hi, this is first part of a video series on bluegrass rhythm guitar. I realized on the first video I made on bluegrass rhythm, I talked a lot about the different concepts, but I didn't really break it down into digestible chunks. So the point of this video series is to break it down into more digestible chunks for people who are just starting out learning how to play rhythm, or even if you've played rhythm for a long time and you're looking for some new ideas. So the rhythm that I tend to use is one that's often used by, or was often used by a lot of the first generation players like Jimmy Martin and Lester Flatt. So in this first video, I'm just going to talk about the basic bluegrass rhythm and a little bit about arm technique to make your rhythm more relaxed and hopefully less labored. So let's talk about a little bit about right arm. So I do have another video about right hand and right arm technique, things that I tend to do for rhythm. So to get kind of a feeling for this technique, I want you to just put your arm over, relax your arm over the guitar, and then you keep your wrists fairly flat at first. And then what I want you to do is just relax your wrist and let it go limp like this. Okay, so there's a natural kind of I call a break in the wrist. Okay, now I want you to just kind of leave your wrist kind of floppy, and you might even just take the pick out of your finger so that there's less things to maybe cause tension. And then I just want you to rock your arm up and down, hinging from the elbow. And notice this motion that I'm doing. Notice what my wrist is doing and how much my fingers or my hand is covering the strings. I'm having to use a lot less up and down arm motion when I have a break in my wrist. But the feeling you want is a very relaxed wrist, so it's very floppy. So it's kind of like the end of a whip. I've heard some people say that. I believe it was Norman Blake who said it's like flicking water off your fingers when you're playing rhythms. You're just trying to flick and get that water off your fingers, but of course you're holding on to a pick. So that's the kind of feeling you want, and you want it to be very, very loose. You don't want, you want to hinge less from the elbow, and so less of a flatter wrist like that. If I'm flat, I'm hinging a lot from the elbow. So a lot of this rhythm, kind of depends on a very relaxed wrist, and depends on just a little bit of hinging, or just a little bit of hinging at the elbow, but a break in that wrist. Okay. Next thing is to put a pick, of course, in your fingers, and then try an exercise where you're going like this, maybe just in the air where you're not even touching the guitar at first, and then you're finally touching the guitar. And get practice in the mirror if you're trying to understand this technique. If it's the first time you've felt it or seen it, or tried it. Okay, then. But I would just encourage you to try to develop, a technique that's very relaxed, because that's going to be very helpful in this rhythm. So in this first video, I'm going to teach the basic bluegrass rhythm lick that I use, and like I said, and again, it's used by a lot of the first generation players, and if you're trying to reconnect with that time period, I would encourage everybody to play the G chord where you let that second string ring, because they didn't know about that chord. It wasn't until Tony, who closed up, that put his finger over the chord just once in five. Of course, the guitar sounds slightly out of tune if you don't flat that B string just a little bit. I encourage everybody just to flatten up that B strings 5-10 cents and let that second string ring, because it sounds more it's reconnecting us more with that time period of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, even 70s. When they didn't play that chord that Tony introduced. So I'm going to start with something I'm sure we all know. It's just the boom-chuck-boom-chuck rhythm. Boom-chuck-boom-chuck. Again, notice what my hand is on my wrist. I've got that break and I'm rotating in order to achieve that motion over the string. I'm not physically trying to rotate my hand like this. I'm hinging at the elbow and I'm just letting my wrist naturally rotate on its own. Okay, so the next part of this basic rhythm lick is boom-chuck-boom-uhchucka-boom, chuck, boom-uhchucka-boom, chuck, boom-uhchucka. So on the boom-uhchucka, I'm doing a boom and then an up, down, up. Boom-chuck-boom-uhchucka-boom, chuck, boom-uhchucka. So to get this, you might just try to practice doing this. Kind of what it feels like to move up and down over your strings. And I would say for the uhchucka, the up part, it doesn't really matter how many strings you grab, as long as you're grabbing at least one. So you get the feel of that. So that's the basic bluegrass rhythm strum. In part 2, I'm going to talk about how to modulate that and how to mainly make it softer and louder, and get into even a little bit more advanced topics where that boom-uhchucka, that boom-uhchucka, I'll actually cross-pick my way through that. Okay, so stay tuned.